Okay, I think it's time to get started. I think we need to call to order the plenary session of the Kansas City chapter of the Linda Rodriguez Fan Club. During which we're going to do a review of Linda's life, highlights, accomplishments, and then every one of us is going to do a sort of a read-along of the new mystery novel here, and I think we'll be done around midnight, but the bar is staying open, so we'll be okay. Well, seriously, welcome to the Kansas City Public Library. I'm Henry Fortunato, Director of Public Affairs, and tonight it really is our great pleasure to serve as the venue for the launch of not merely a new mystery novel, but really, from what I understand, a new mystery series by Kansas City author, poet, all-around woman of letters, and a great friend of the library, Linda Rodriguez. Since all of you are members in good standing of the LR Fan Club, you know that she's already the author of 2 acclaimed books of poetry, Skin Hunger and Heart's Migration. These are works that caused no less an authority on all things literary than Rodolfo Anaya, author of Bless Me Ultima, to exclaim, "What talent! The most accomplished poet of our generation, a poetic voice for our time." But as you know, now Linda has decided to tackle another form, another genre. Her first detective novel, it's called Every Last Secret, and as I'm sure most of you know, it features a Kansas City setting and a tough woman cop named Marquita Skeet Banyan, who is out to solve a campus murder. The book has already won top honors in the Malice Domestic Best First Traditional Mystery Novel Competition. Plus, it's earned rave reviews for superb writing, compelling plot lines, and terrific characters. Indeed, there are those who are comparing Linda's Skeet Banyan to Sarah Paretsky's V.I. Warshawski. High praise indeed, but not surprising. Over the course of a diverse and accomplished career, in addition to her books of poetry, Linda has served as head of the UMKC Women's Center, co-convener of a women's caucus at the United Nations. She helped found the Writers' Place. She's provided strong leadership to the Latino Writers Collective, and she even had 2 of her poems read by Garrison Keillor on the Writer's Almanac. Along the way, she has picked up numerous honors, most especially the 2010 Thorpe Mann Award for Literary Excellence. Every Last Secret already has its first sequel. And I think Linda's already finished that one, and yeah, she's shaking her head, so that'll be out soon. So we'll be back again for the second Linda Rodriguez Fan Club meeting in just a few months. And indeed, I'm told she's actually gearing up for the 3rd installment. Is this true? Oh my goodness. So, I mean, we're gonna have Linda Rodriguez all the time, all the year. There we go. Because I have a feeling that Skeet Banyan is going to be around for a while. Which means that the rest of you need to catch up. Luckily, thanks to our friends at Rainy Day Books, you can. Every Last Secret is available for sale. Linda will be signing copies following her presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Linda Rodriguez.
Oh, that was nice, you know? It's lovely to see all of you here. And it's lovely to be here. And I'm going to make this very brief. I'm going to talk for just a little bit about the whole process of getting here. I'm going to read a couple of short snippets from the book, and then I'm going to ask for questions, and then we will sign books, eat cake, drink wine, you know, and celebrate generally. So I had to do a keynote speech not long ago, and they asked me to do something about my overnight success. And those people laughing are the people who've known me for many years, including my son sitting back there. I'm so proud. He's never come to any of my poetry readings, but he came today. You know, I'm really grateful. And he's responsible for that gorgeous cake out there. He's the one that's making all the money because he's a brilliant engineer and computer person, you know. Anyway, so what I did was I titled my keynote speech, The 35-Year Overnight Success. And then I explained, and my motto throughout that was, don't give up. And if there's any kind of advice I could give to anyone who's an aspiring writer out there, and I know there are some of you because I recognize you, it's don't give up. You just never know when it will finally all come sort of gushing down. But this book, I started writing about 3.5, 4 years ago. And I had cleared out some space to just really push through a first draft. And so I did a first draft in about 4.5, 5 months. And then I let it sit for a while, and that for a while got to be a longer while because I was doing freelance work to bring in money. And then I decided, I was talking with my friend Jane Wood, who followed me at the UMKC Women's Center as director. And she's also a writer, and she also had a novel that was unfinished sitting on the shelf. And I said, Jane, you know, we ought to put together a novel writing group, you know. So I asked Deborah Schaus and Sally Berneathy over there to join us, and Trish Reeves, and then Trish had to drop out right away because of pressures of work, and then Sally had to drop out because of the same. And then we added Jacqueline Guidry, and we have been together ever since. And we helped Jane finish her novel. We went through the first revision of my novel, and we're still, you know, still working away on our things. Then my novel, after I did that revision, it sat again for a while because I was doing stuff to bring in money. And then I won this big award that let me have a free month at Ragdale. And I was supposed to be writing the first draft of a book of poetry, and I did. I wrote the first draft of a book of poetry there. But I took this novel just in case, and it was so conducive to work, good creative work, that I finished the poetry book, and then I did the complete total revision on the novel and sent it off. And the editor I sent it to kept it for a long time. She really liked it. And in the end, she had to send it back to me because she just couldn't get it through her house. But she sent it with a lot of compliments about all the things she liked in it. And then she suggested that I send to this Malice Domestic first book contest, which I had never heard of it. And the deadline was 10 days away. So I had to scramble to send off for the form and to get it sent in. And then I forgot about it because you do this with stuff that you send off for contests and everything. Went on to do other work. And months and months later, I get an email from someone whose name is totally unfamiliar to me. And the subject line is all lowercase malice. And I'm thinking, oh, good, this is one of these that you delete without opening spam. But I was kind of curious. So I didn't remember make any connection at all, but I was curious what kind of spam you would send with malice in the subject line. And I thought, this is probably going to say, I've put a bad spell on you, and if you do not send me money, you're going to... So I opened it, and it was actually from the woman who was one of the preliminary judges, and she had just sent this book on as a finalist to the editors at St. Martin's and wanted to let me know I was a finalist, and very kindly told me that even if it doesn't win, it probably will get a publishing contract with some publisher, and it will help you get an agent. So that was, I mean, oh, win, I've won there, right there, you know. And so I didn't expect much more to come out of it. And about a month later, I got this phone call, and it was an editor in New York City, and she was calling to tell me that she was going to be my editor because my book had won, and they were going to be sending me a contract. And I was, well, people who know me know that I'm almost never speechless. But I was speechless for a few minutes there, and she said, "Linda, are you there?" And then I wish I'd stayed speechless because I just started babbling, you know. And to her credit, she didn't take it back and give it to the next person, you know. And she's a wonderful editor, just a fabulous editor. And she was so sweet. She called me today to congratulate me on the publication of the book, which was really nice. Today's been a fun day. I got a phone call from my publicist at St. Martin's, who is great, saying, "Congratulations, enjoy it." From my editor saying, "Congratulations, enjoy it." And from my fabulous agent saying, "Congratulations, enjoy it. I'm going to try and screw some more money out of them." So we're in good shape. She said, "Well, they wanted to wait to sign the contract till they saw if you got any buzz, and there's a lot of buzz out there, so we're going to sign this contract for a lot more than it would have been." So from her mouth to God's ear. Anyway, it's been a fun ride. When my editor first called me, it wasn't enough that they were going to give me a $10,000 advance and let it be published by St. Martin's, a major publisher, but they were going to pay my way to the Malice Domestic Conference, this big national mystery conference. And so I went to the Malice Domestic Conference, and Ben couldn't go with me because he actually was starring in something of his own here in Kansas City, a big Jewish poetry reading that he was the MC for, so he had to be here for that at the same time I was getting the award. And Nancy Picard came to that conference late, and the first thing she said when she saw me is, "Where's Ben? Why isn't he here?" You know. But I walked into this conference, and it was days before my editor got there, or Nancy and Sally Goldenbaum, who are two mystery authors from Kansas City that I know. So I knew nobody. And it's this is really an unusual thing for me anymore. At my stage of life, I go to a lot of conferences and national conferences, but they're in women's issues or they're literary, and I know people from all over the country, so it's always fun. It's time to see people that you haven't seen in years. I knew no one. I knew nothing that was going on here. And suddenly I reverted to my true inner self, which is, believe it or not, a very shy person who goes and sits in the corner, and just watches people. And an elderly lady came and sat beside me, dressed rather eccentrically, and she said, "Is anyone sitting here?" I said, "Oh, no, sit. Yeah, sure, then I won't look all alone." And she introduced herself, and I recognized her name right away. She's a major mystery writer with a long selling series that I'm well aware of, have read a lot of, and so I introduced myself to her. And she took me under her wing. She's a New York Times bestseller. She took me under her wing, and she told me which panels to go to and took me to them and introduced me to people and was just a darling. And before I knew it, a lot of mystery writers were doing that with me. And so I came away from there, and I knew some people in the mystery field. And over the past year, they have stayed in touch with me. They have introduced other friends to me. They have blurbed my book with fantastic, beautiful blurbs. And that's worth cash in the bank right there. And they've just all around it's a very warm and welcoming. And they don't hold it against me that I'm a poet, which I really thought they might, because frankly, if somebody came from mystery writing into the poetry field, I think they would hold it against them, the poets would. But so anyway, that's a little little taste of the journey up to now. The last 2 months have been a whirl, not of writing. I finished the second book. It's with my editor, and went to my agent, and then went to my editor. My agent thinks it's better than this one. And I've just done a little start on the third book, but I've had to be just focused on promotion, because anymore, even from the big houses, publishers want you to promote your books. And they want you to set up an online presence, and they want you to get buzz going. And I really had no idea how to do any of this. So while I was trying to do it, I was researching how to do it and what to do. And so it was kind of a learning process as I was doing it. So it was very harrowing and time-consuming. Now, the next time one of you has a book published, honey, I know all the things to do to promote that book. I've got a list of contacts. I know the websites to get, just come and see me, So tonight is a nice break. I'm getting ready to start book tour. I'm going to be traveling starting tomorrow. But this is my time to stop and celebrate, because I've been too busy to be excited about it, and to be with the tons of people I see who have played major roles in my life. I could just start naming them off out here, And instead, what I thought I would do is read you a couple of little snippets of the book. Now, a mystery novel is hard to give a reading from, because unlike a regular novel, you can't just open it up and read some dramatic scene with setup given, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be giving away clues. So I have picked little snippets that are usually the end of one scene moving into another, or the end of one scene ending a chapter, that will give you a little idea of Skeet Banion's personality and voice, and of some of the things that she's encountering. Now, people have asked me where that name comes from. On my father's side, which is where the Cherokee comes from, I have a cousin who is younger than me, whose name is Marquita. And when we were kids, she was called Skeeter. She was never called Skeet. She was called Skeeter, which she hated. I can't imagine why. Because it was short for mosquito. This was down in Oklahoma. And when I started building this character, I just knew suddenly that my cousin's name, Marquita, was right, but not Skeeter, Skeet. So she's Marquita Skeet Banion. And a little background, she was once the highest ranking woman police officer on the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, following in the steps of her father, who's an alcoholic, and who never got off the streets as a patrolman, but who always had a real good reputation in the police department, until suddenly Internal Affairs accused him of corruption, and he took early retirement rather than face that. And he had always been very harsh and demanding of Skeet. And she married the guy, the cop that he wanted as a son, and that proved to be a disaster. She's divorced from him, but he doesn't want to let go of her. And so when her father took this retirement rather than face the charges and prove them wrong, this just cut the ground out from under Skeet. She took a look at her life and she said, "What am I killing myself for?" And just then, her best friend had moved to a small town right outside of Kansas City. And this is a town I made up. It's called Choteau, Missouri. And yes, it sits about where Riverside is, and it has elements of Parkville and elements of Liberty and elements of Lawrence and a number of other small towns right in the Kansas City area. And her friend had moved there, and she told her, there's an opening on the campus for chief of police. And so Skeet became the first chief of campus police at, I'm sorry, the town isn't Choteau, the town is Brewster, the university is Choteau. Choteau is based physically on Park College, that beautiful campus. But the university itself and its structure, it's much larger than Park. It has a different structure. It's based more on things like UMKC, KU, some of those that I've taught, I've been at, or I've had friends who worked there and taught there. So nothing in this book is actually based on anything in real life. I mean, it's based on stuff in real life, but not on anything that you could point a finger to here. So this is the history. So Skeet has been there 6 months, and she's thinking, this was a great idea. I'm not bothered by my drunken father. I'm not bothered by my jealous, possessive ex. You know, I have a house. I've even started to, you know, I've bought a collie to go with my street smart cat that I'd had all those years in the city. The collie is Lady, and the cat is Wilma Mankiller. And, well, you know, we have to give these props to our idols and our heroes in our books. So, and she said, and I even have plants that are alive. So it's a much better life. And then suddenly it all changes. A phone call comes in the night, a body's been found. Skeet's back to investigating murder as she did so many years in the homicide division in Kansas City. And other things from Kansas City come back to her, and she has to go back to Kansas City to deal with them. So that's all the setup I'm going to give. And I'm going to read just some very short little segments. In this first scene, she's had to go after the discovery of the body. She's had to go to the house of the murdered man. And he lived down at the other end of the block from her. She'd never met him. She knew his wife and his stepson. His stepson would walk her dog and feed her animals when she had to go out of town. So has really, you know, just hated the idea of going in to tell them this bad news. And this is after it's over. The mother has broken down, and the son is walking her out to the door. There will probably be unpleasant information coming out about Andrew as we go through this case, Brian. Be prepared. He nodded abruptly. I always figured he was slick, but he made Mom happy after she was so miserable. He ruffled his thick blonde hair and dropped his hands to his side. You're going to be busy with this, aren't you? I nodded without paying much attention. I was trying to imagine Tina or Brian traveling to campus at midnight and killing Andrew. I couldn't see it. Don't worry, he said. I'll watch out for Lady. You don't have to mess with that. Not now with all this. That was so like the kid, to worry about my dog when his own family was being torn apart. I want to. His voice was fierce. School will be crap. Everybody's staring and whispering. Mom will be a basket case. It'll be one normal thing for me. After a moment of inner debate, I nodded. Okay, if it gets too intense, you're welcome to let yourself in and chill out. Lady and Wilma will love it. Just be sure you let your mom know. Sure, thanks, Skeet. I watched him close the door and turn out the lights downstairs. My teeth were clenched, my jaw stiff. I'd felt the fury building as I sat with them. Some bastard came to my peaceful town, my campus, and killed a student, leaving Tina in shreds, Brian worrying about her safety, and both under suspicion. I stalked down the block to my house. The quiet little street had lost some of the charm it had always held for me. I would track this animal down and bring him to trial. Andrew McAfee may have been a petty crook, but he had been under my protection. Someone had snuffed out his life, and I would see whoever it was behind bars. I suddenly realized I could run away to this peaceful place to hide from who I was, but I couldn't turn away from it now. My old boss from homicide had been right when he said it was something inborn. I had to unravel this nasty tangle and see this killer face justice. Now, I realized as I reached my door, I had to call the interim chancellor and tell the man who feared all bad publicity about what had happened on his campus tonight in the middle of his capital campaign. And this one is at the end of Skeet's meeting with this chancellor. And Skeet and the chancellor just don't get along at all well. And one of the vice chancellors, Jeremy, comes in. The chancellor relies on him. And Jeremy comes in and he tries to smooth things over, but he's got two hotheads, so it's a little tough. But they've finally made it out. Good. Willett's nod was final, dismissing me. Just find the killer quickly. Do your job. I nodded and left the office with a sense of relief. The chancellor might still fire me, but at least he had enough sense to wait until after I'd caught the murderer. I walked the steep downhill path to Old Central. Choto University centered around Old Central, that 19th century castle built on a hill, the original home of Dolph Brewster, founder of the town that bore his name and of the college named after a French trader rumored to be variously his grandfather, his mentor, or the man from whom he stole the foundations of his fortune. A train whistled in the distance. The cloudy, threatening skies were slowly clearing above me. Streaks of sunlight pierced the clouds and lit up elements of the campus, touching budding trees and early growth lawn in the quad I was crossing. The campus carillon rang out from Old Central's tower in bright, clear tones. One of the things that attracted me to this job was the environment. Instead of spending my days in cement box buildings bounded by streets full of pimps, thieves, and homeless drunks, I worked in a historic mansion surrounded by trees, handsome buildings, and earnest college students. The job was the same, though. Change the surroundings, lower the frequency of offenses. I was still dealing with the breakdown of civilized behavior. I shrugged my shoulders against the chill wind that filled the morning air. It was always a mistake to assume winter was over and the bad weather passed before May. I should have kept my coat on. And this last one, if I can get it here. This is just a very, very brief little tiny piece of a scene. Skeet has been, she's been in her office much of the day, the afternoon, going through the papers of the dead man. And her secretary comes in, Mary, her secretary. As the day ended, I turned to the last pile. Assorted papers that didn't fit any other category. Research notes for Oldrich. These I set aside to go through when my mind was fresher. And Andrew's pocket calendar. I leaned back in my chair. An orange magenta sunset beyond the river rippled up through thin layers of pink and rose to purple blue and charcoal clouds that had moved in while I sat at my desk. Standing and stretching, I moved in front of the window to watch the colors change minute by minute. Mary came in. "It's 5:40, I'm going home. Are you done?" "No, I'm just going to go through his calendar and call it a night." I smiled at her and nodded my head toward the window. "Gorgeous, isn't it?" She moved for a better view. "Pastor would say it's a visible sign of God's grace." I looked back out the window. "I don't know much about God's grace, but I can't see anything like that without knowing there's some kind of sense in the world's design. My grand says creation has an order, and only humans are too stupid and self-centered to be blind to it." Mary laughed. She and Pastor would see eye to eye on that. I thought about Gran making cornmeal offerings to the four directions at sunrise, or asking permission from the earth before she harvested wild greens and herbs, and didn't quite see that meeting of the minds. I turned from the window back to my desk, rolling my stiff shoulders. Well, I'll continue my search for order in this mess. And I read that last part because Gran is a big part of this book, though she lives down in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. She's Skeet's Cherokee grandmother who helped raise her and who just stamped a big imprint on Skeet. And I actually modeled her on my own grandmother, who died when I was 13, but I let Skeet have hers live into her adulthood to be with her. So thank you very much for being a wonderful audience.